This is the Cover 3 Tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Danny Cannell. That's Tom Fornelli. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate. Yes, we do get interactive here on a Thursday. I went back through that big old bag of mail. We had really been doing a good job the last couple of weeks cleaning everything out. Lot of great questions. And if you want to add a question. Yes. Okay. If you want to add a question to a future Mailbag episode, leave us a 5-star review. And in that review, you can put your question. We also have had a lot of activity in the tailgate this morning. So always love to reward the early birds here. This one says, got in at 9:43 a.m., more than an hour before the show got started live. Cracking a cold one, getting the conversation. How many top 25 transfer portal wide receivers from this last cycle are probably good enough to start for Clemson? This coming on the back of Dabo Swinney's comments at the ACC spring meetings, where he said a lot of the guys in the portal, some of them, they already know where they're going. Some of them are just trying to test the market and secure a bag. But a lot of them are not good enough to come and play for us. So with names like Isaiah Bond, Evan Stewart, Juice Wells, Colby Young, Noah Rogers, Deion Burks, how many of those guys do you think would show up in the upstate and be starting for the Tigers on day one?
I mean, I think those top guys would start anywhere. I look at Clemson and the transfer portal approach. Wide receiver is not the spot where I think Clemson really needed to be in the portal. Like, offensive line is where I think Clemson needed to be in the portal. I think if you talk to people around Clemson, they're actually pretty high on their wide receivers. Like, they feel pretty good. So I don't like, yeah, Evan Stewart, Isaiah Bond, they would have been starters for Clemson, but I don't think that's the area where Clemson needed to be hitting the portal.
I think it's one of those situations where clearly some of them would have started. I mean, you can play 4 wide receiver. You can go 4 wide. I mean, you can do a lot at the wide receiver position. I think and I've talked about this before, is that when was the last time there was a receiver that was Sammy Watkins, DeAndre Hopkins, like that quality of receiver at Clemson? You don't necessarily have to have those guys, but boy, look at the teams that have won national titles and some of the receivers they've had to make impacts. And maybe that's one of the reasons why the quarterbacks have not been as stellar at Clemson as they were with Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence during their heyday. Those were all great quarterbacks too. But I think it's one of those things where, like, we all kind of disagreed with Dabo that, like, yeah, you've got great talent. Like, we get it. But you could enhance that talent by putting even more talent on the roster that's accessible to you, and ignoring it is not the right path to go.
Yeah, Clemson in last 2 seasons has dealt with injury issues at wide receiver, where if everybody who was on that preseason roster had remained healthy, then it would not have gotten to a point where it seemed so dire at the wide receiver position. You know, they asked about the top 25. Like, yeah, Deion Burks would start, but like Julian Fleming or Keandre Lambert-Smith, I'd rather have Clemson's wide receivers than those guys if I'm just picking. And for the NFL top end guys, this is where I'm going to go back to it, and I'm ready to be burned, because everybody remembers a Joe. Everybody remembers how long we were waiting around for some of those other 4-star, 5-star, big bodied talents to really emerge as a game breaker. But I do think that Bryant Wesco Jr., the true freshman who came in, he showed out during spring practice. He showed out during the spring game. There is a hope that he could be the next in line, like a T. Higgins, a Mike Williams, just like those real difference makers that had a big impact, like you mentioned, Danny, on being able to go out there and make the quarterbacks look good too. I mean, I mentioned this once, I mentioned it 100 times, but in the 2016 comeback, when Bo Scarborough was putting Clemson defenders in the ground and it was looking like Alabama was just going to roll to another title, a second straight title at that time, 50-50 balls to Mike Williams, baby. It's just, let's get it up there and let him go make a play. And so I do think the future is bright. They need to stay healthy. And to answer the specifics of the question, I really think it's not 25 portal wide receivers. It really might be closer to like 5, 6, or 7 who'd be able to walk in and start right away.
Yeah, it's not unfeasible that 6 months from now we'll say Clemson has the best group of receivers in the ACC.
No. So like Sam Brown at 24/7 Sports was the number 10 wide receiver, 4 stars of transferred from Houston to Miami. Mm-hmm. I'm not positive that I would take Sam Brown over Tyler Brown, Antonio Williams, maybe Stellato. Like it's a very.
You mentioned Wesco. They've got TJ Moore coming in. It's like they're pretty okay there, I think.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the receivers, I could hear Dabo Sweeney pushing back. So we had a former walk-on too catch a game-winning touchdown pass and Hunter Renfro. Like nobody wanted that guy, but we wanted him. He was one of ours. You could definitely hear Dabo making that case too.
All right. So one related question from somebody different that followed about 15 minutes later, again, before the show got started. So we appreciate this. Did I lose it? I bet I can find it. So the question is in regards to Garrett Riley, because there was once a time when Garrett Riley was one of the top wide receivers and one of the top offensive coordinators in all of college football. So Timmy asks, do you think Garrett Riley is still a hot OC in college football, or Clemson has to be a top 5 offense to make Garrett Riley a hot name again?
Yes and yes.
I don't think they have to be top 5.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the last question a little bit, like Garrett Riley came in late because TCU was in the title game the year before. So like a lot of times when a coordinator comes in, they're usually coming in late November, early December after the regular season ends. Riley couldn't do that. He couldn't get there until January. And then we mentioned like all last year, like that wide receiver room was just guys were hurt every single week. They never had any consistency from week to week at that spot. So you're bringing in a new offense and all your guys are hurt all the time. It's really hard to find consistency. So I think that his stock has suffered in the eyes of plenty nationwide because of the results last year. But I don't think it's that out of line to think, again, Clemson's offense will be good. Like my concern, as I said at the last question with Clemson, is the offensive line and then the quarterback. I think they're going to be fine at running back and wide receiver.
I don't think it has to be top 5 offense. You know what it probably has more to do with? If Clemson wins the ACC and gets to the playoff.
Yeah.
Like they could be 10-2, have a top 25 offense, and then we're talking about them more. They're winning. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, remember Garrett Riley? It's like that's why I think we should start our own coaching search firm, because that's a lot of times what it is. Like, oh, who's the hot team right now? That's the coordinator, either offensive or defensive. He usually gets plucked from that staff. So if Clemson has a resurgence and they win the ACC and they're in the playoff and win a game, then yeah, he's probably a hot name in the coaching market again. Plus, it does help to have his last name. You know, that always helps them too.
Well, it's like his bounce back ability is enhanced by that and by the fact that he was also a flash to come onto the scene. I mean, we had seen him make the moves. We've been tracking his last name, but the TCU run was just so big. Mm-hmm. And, he rode that wave all the way to this job that, I don't think that it has been a massive downfall. I think that he would definitely be able to bounce back and be as the question from Timmy is asking, a hot OC again. But it does feel like it has more to do with the win-loss record. And like, look, you can do this thing that happens. There's some games on Clemson's schedule where they're going to be like 14-point favorites, right? Go win that game by 24. Like don't play with your food and have the offense just like not being effective. I was looking at a run of Clemson's offense one time. I think it might have even been heading into last year where every single season in like the basic counting stats, but still yards matter, they were number 1 or number 2 in the ACC. And you'd go into the game by game, and they would have these tough games against the best defenses that they played where they weren't lighting it up. But boy, when they played the bottom of the ACC, they were putting 62 on the board. What did they do to get Al Golden fired? They didn't go into the locker room and then put like 62 on the board or 58 to nothing or something like that. When you get that advantage and you just go pedal to the metal, that would be something that I think would give Garrett Riley a little bit more of that hot OC type flavor in the eyes of many. All right.
I do enjoy, like, and I know we've played a part in it, but like Clemson only wins 9 games last year or whatever, instead of winning 10 or 11 or 12 like it does every season. And now it's just like, oh, they're done. They're dead. Program's over.
9 games.
Yeah.
They won 10 games for a decade. And then Ryan with remember they chose what's his name over Max Duggan eventually. Was that Chandler Morris the first time?
Yeah. I don't know. Lost to the annals of history.
Yeah, he got and I want to say that was against Colorado. No, I mean the pre-Dion Colorado goes out there, game's a little tight, and then Max Duggan comes in and takes it the rest of the way. All right. Coming up on the other side, a fun question about how much we love college football and sort of the way that we remember it. So what was the best era of college football? What represents, big air quotes, the good old days to you? We'll get into that and more next.
My primary function is to create a balance and avoid a war.
There's some new players in town, and they brought the plague.
Why are you back? Because I missed you.
When I act, I do so with purpose.
You got my attention. You don't want that. What happened to Kingston?
I'm looking forward to this because Danny has a very different relationship with college football than Tom, who's got a different relationship with college football than me. 3 different places of the country, 3 different, different times when we came to the sport and different involvement in the sport. So curious to hear y'all. And of course, everybody in the tailgate weighing in as well. But this does come from the 5-star mailbag where username Chi-Town asks, with the wife gone for a long weekend, going to hunker down and watch some games from my favorite college football era, the 2000s and the Big Ten. Whether it's the conference how it should be, no East-West Coast teams, the huge shoulder pads, or the relative parity, it has to be my favorite era of the sport and when I came to love this wonderful sport. I'm curious what everyone's favorite era of college football is and what you'd all consider, quote, the good old days.
Did you guys read? There was a thing, there was a chart. I saw an article written about what people view as their favorite times in history. And like, no matter how old you were or what era, it was like during your teens.
Yeah.
Like that was your favorite era, like of music, of movies and everything. And I think there probably would be, because the first thing that came to my mind was like late 80s through the 90s, early 2000s, like that 15, 20 year run. But that was me in my teens, right? So like that was the era that I grew up in. I do think some of it for me personally, growing up in the state of Florida, I mean, there was a saying at the time, the national championship runs through the state of Florida because it was going to be Miami, it was going to be Florida State, or it was going to be Florida. Those games felt huge, but you also had Nebraska was a powerhouse then. You had Notre Dame, Colorado. You had representation across the country. You had real football where you could actually tackle and you could hit quarterbacks. I don't know. There were some of the icons of just the bigger names. I think of Bo Jackson, Brian Bosworth, some of the true characters of college football. I'm partial though. I'm curious to hear if you guys are a decade later.
I want to push back on the part of the question that talked about the parity in the Big Ten in the 2000s.
Ohio State and Michigan were number 1 and number 2 in the country in 2006.
Like this was before like the Big Ten championship game had, part of it was before that was created. So like there were split champions some years. But like from 2000 to 2009, that's 10 seasons. Michigan or Ohio State were at least a split Big Ten champion in 9 of those seasons. So the only year they weren't was 2001 when Illinois was the champion. But that was like they beat Ohio State that year to win the conference. But it was just, yeah. Anyway, but every other year, Michigan or Ohio State were at least a split champion. So I don't think that parity really existed. I just think that, the Big Ten was a little more mediocre then. I feel like I approached this question from different areas. I think as far as the football being played, we are in the good old days of college football. I think this is the best the sport has been as far as the football. As far as how I view the sport off the field and how it looks, then yeah, I'm probably more in that pre-real realignment kind of shifting. Not so much the BCS, although I have argued I'd rather have the BCS in the playoff, although at the time during the BCS, I was all for the playoff, and then it came and I hated it. But I'd rather have it back when the conferences were still very much geographic. And it wasn't based just on how much every single cent you could squeeze out of your TV contract. Like you were playing your rivals, you were playing schools close to you, you were playing your friends. Because like you'd grow up, you graduate, and you'd meet, you get a job and you work with people from other schools. They're all in the area. So like you had like that connection to people right away where you could just, like talk shit. Like, you're a Florida State guy. You could talk crap to your Florida guy that you work with. So yeah, I'd rather go back to that. But as far as the football, we are in the golden age.
Okay. So I thought about eras. And I cannot really go back into the 50s and the 40s. And I can't say that my favorite era was something before I was born, but as somebody who enjoys the history and the narrative of this. So through the 60s and 70s, Bear Bryant basically ran things. But then late 60s, early 70s, I mean, it's Darrell Royal at Texas, Vince Dooley at Georgia, Woody Hayes at Ohio State, early Joe Paterno first getting things going at Penn State. John McKay transfers into John Robinson at USC. Bo Schembechler at Michigan. Basically, everything until Miami's first title in 1983 is these iconic brands that we still think about. Some of them not winning as much as they used to, but like that was the foundation that I think allowed for people to come to understand what was like the great programs and the standard in college football. If you want to argue that era with those programs and those coaches, that was the good old days, I got you. I just didn't live it. So I can't come in there and say like, yeah, I feel that. But studying history, if you want to say that, that's fine. Then we get into 1980s football. Florida State and Miami emerge. Notre Dame starts running hot, which has huge national appeal. Oklahoma has that transition as Barry Switzer really helps them take the next level. Penn State continues to be playing at a high level with Joe Paterno. And then this is where, Danny, I need your expertise because the early 1990s football kind of feels like an extension of the 80s. When you think about the coaches and the programs and basically everything, Tom Osborne has the middle of the 90s kind of cornered, and that's even an extension of the decade prior. So I kind of take, in terms of an era, I kind of take that 80s into 90s, basically everything up to early BCS, until 1998, formation of the BCS. That all feels like an era to me. Does that check out?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Split national titles multiple times. Yeah, definitely it does. Did any of us notice a difference from 84 with the new TV deals in place that type of exposure helped create this? Because that's kind of the era we're talking about. 80s, 84 was a thing, and then 80s, 90s, when all of a sudden the prevalence and national stage of so many good college football games and programs all of a sudden started to take place.
Yes, but also cable television in general. Like the technological advancements with the Supreme Court ruling just meant you got to watch more. Okay, so 80s into 90s, I would call that the good old days. But again, that's back to your like nostalgia theory. It's like whatever was 20 years old is now going to come back again. I was watching the Mario Brothers movie with my son this morning, and I was like, ooh, look at there. Just like picking out little things that I remember. I think college football peaked with Texas USC. I think that 1998 to 2005, from a national product, that we had still carried all that momentum over from the previous era, which felt like the good old days to me. And the BCS created controversy, but it didn't beat you over the head with it from week one like the college football playoff era does now. Like there was controversy and kicking and screaming, and we were looking at these 0.9980 every Sunday night, and it seemed so dumb, but it made it a national type conversation. And I think that Texas USC BCS national championship game is just, with the stakes, the players involved, and the finish, one of the greatest college football games of all time. I think the late BCS era is important, but not good. I'm talking 2006 to 2013. I'm talking about the SEC just bulldozing everybody. I mean,
but
the 2007 season was fine, but it ended with a 2-loss LSU team in the national championship game.
Yeah.
You got pushback there?
I mean, you didn't like it because the SEC was dominating, or you just didn't think it was good football?
I'm not talking about the quality of football. I definitely approached this from more of the like narrative, how we talk about it, how likely it is that you're going to get somebody who doesn't love the sport, who didn't play football, like the ability that you're going to have to make it be a real thing. It's like it got so sucked down into the SEC lens that, you know, we probably lost a little bit in terms of the national college football conversation.
If it makes you feel better, even if we had a 14 playoff, it probably still would have been dominated by the SEC from that stretch.
Sure. And then
going back to your point about the BCS, though, in general, I don't want to turn this into whatever, but like it was like there were some results with the BCS, the top two, you'd be like, what the, you know, like this is dumb. But at least with the BCS, you knew what you had to do. Like the numbers were silly, but at least it was like, okay, this is what you have to do. If you want to be in the top two, you have to be good in these polls and you have to be good in these metrics. Whereas opposed to now, you have no idea. It's just whatever the hell they want to put in.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And then CFP era 2014 to 2023. So if I was to rank it, my era is 80s, 90s. Then I would go 1998 to 2005. Then I would just maybe even go CFP era 2014 to 2023 because the football is good. Then maybe late BCS era SEC rise after that.
I think the good old days of college football are about to begin in 2024.
Nothing makes Tom feel romantic about college football like the current time and day. You know, I mean, who would?
I mean, who? How can you not be romantic about Cal versus Virginia? Like,
yeah, Danny, anything else on that? Sorry, I didn't mean to like run with it. I just
no, I love it. I think you encapsulated everything that we have been talking about, because I do wonder if there's some people, like if I talked to my dad and said, what do you think the best college football era was, if he would say the 50s and 60s or the Oklahoma dynasties of the days or the Four Horsemen, you know, running at Notre Dame. I don't know. I'll have to ask him. I'll be curious to ask. I'm going to try to ask some older guys at the golf club what they think the, you know, golden era of college football was. Because I think they might still even say, I mean, my dad, we had a lot of memories going down to the Orange Bowl to watch Notre Dame in Colorado, going to watch the Miami Hurricanes, like in the 80s and 90s when it felt like it was peak. So I'd be curious to know. It'd be a good, like a poll question to ask, you know, everyone to see what it potentially could have been.
Yeah. 100%. And Tom, you are right. Like the investment that has been made in college football has created all of the headaches that we're going through with conference realignment and the House settlement, but it also provided an incentive for people to get better at their jobs. Mm-hmm. Like coaches, you know, like coaches to raise their standard of coaching. And that's led to a better product, better developed players, better coach teams. They don't always make the best decisions in pressurized situations, but I do think that is a positive impact. While there have been a lot of negative impacts of the huge influx of money into college football, I give the money probably some credit for the product that you talk about it.
It is hard to judge in retrospect, because you could say the same thing about the NFL, but like when you go back to watch, like if you go on YouTube and you watch like a game from 2003 or hell, even 2013, 10, 11 years ago, the level of play is so dramatically different. than what you see. You know, it's like you watch the game, you're like, wow, these guys look like they're playing in the Stone Age already. It's just really basic kind of offensive stuff, whereas the innovation and just the talent level and the ability of the players that we have in just that short time. And again, the NFL is the same, but I do feel like the gap in between the NFL and the level of play in college is getting closer. At least at the top of the sport.
Yeah, like to me,
like when you're watching the MAC, it's still the MAC.
Well, off the top of my head, in watching old games, I always feel like I recognize individual excellence more. Like the one guy who is going to go be a starter in the NFL is going to take over this game because there's the talent level of the other team isn't good enough to stop them, and the coaching hasn't gotten to the point that we can adjust without just letting this guy torch us in one-on-one situations. Like
and now when that happens, it's like that dude's really good.
Right. Yeah. Now when you see somebody do it, that's incredibly impressive. All right, let's go back to the tailgate. We appreciate everybody who jumps in early as always. Gregory says the CFB version of dump, marry, kill, or marry, kill, dump is fire, hire, make coordinator. So y'all know the game, marry, kill, stuff. And except this time it is fire, hire as a head coach, or make coordinator. And the options that we have been provided for fire, hire, demote to coordinator are Jimbo Fisher, Mac Brown, and Les Miles.
If these are my options, I'm the one getting fired.
Right. If you're the AD.
Yeah.
I think you have to fire Les.
Yeah.
I think you make Jimbo your coordinator and you make Mac the head coach. I mean, they're kind of all would be right in their sweet spots as roles, with Les looking on from the sidelines.
Yeah, you almost, I don't know about you, Danny, but I almost penciled Jimbo in as the coordinator to make this easier. And then Les Miles or Mac Brown, I'll go with Mac Brown.
Right, because I don't want to have an investigation on my hands.
Right. I was going to say, Mac Brown has had some criticism in recent years, which, from in-game, in-game work to the reasons why the team might not be finishing the season strong. But, buddy, he is much better as a CEO, attention to details, and running a clean ship than than what we saw at the end of the Les Miles era.
Let Mac sit on that rubber chicken circuit and just let the rest of the coaches do what they do.
Yeah. Jimbo as the coordinator is look, he may have binders and his little readers on, but at least he's we know exactly what we're gonna get. We've got a follow-up. USC style. Clay Helton.
Oh, that's easy.
Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian. So is it Kiffin or Sark as your coordinator?
Kiffin's my coordinator, Sark is my coach, and Clay Helton, you're a great guy, but you're not going to be working here.
Okay. Same.
Yeah, I think that's pretty easy. Sark is much more suited in the role. You don't have to worry as much about if he's going to tweet anything or say something. He's got things cleaned up. Like, he's a good face of the program now, and Lane's still got the juice as a coordinator, play caller.
Plus, Lane's desperately trying to get a head coaching job, so you're going to get his best effort as a coordinator.
Hey, pipe down, Tika. Chip, Danny, or Tom.
Let's see. I'm probably not the coordinator. You've definitely Chip's a Mac Brown proposition.
Fire me. I'll take the buyout and go golfing.
Yeah.
Right. We're all begging to be fired.
Sure. Pay me $10 million to go away. I dare
Chip
you.
is not begging to be fired. Chip Madison is very happy to be employed. All right. Coming up on the other side, jumping back into the big old bag of mail, where I got some hockey flavored question. Goons, enforcers. Who are some of the best enforcers in college football history? We'll get into that and more next.
Women have power. Use it.
You need to send a message. I never should have sent a boy to do a woman's job.
The Chi. New episodes now streaming. Visit ParamountPlus.com/The Chi to get 50% off.
Yeah, Anthony, special teams coordinator, recruiting coordinator, vibes coordinator, all great positions for me. But that's It's probably the extent of it, especially with this crew. All right. So Steven jumped into the big old bag of mail, and we appreciate that. He said, with the Stanley Cup playoff in full swing, I couldn't help but think if college football had enforcers or goons. Instead of targeting or roughing the passer penalties, just send out your enforcer to handle it. If that was a real thing, who would be some of your top picks for college football enforcers? Is it the Boz? Is it the Rock? Is it Cam Newton and his hat? What current players would you least like to drop the gloves with, or what matchup would you most like to see? Thanks, Steven from Savannah. Vontez Burfict.
Yeah.
That was the name that came. The
Was
picture of his
100%.
Was
looking
an
across the
actual
line.
enforcer. Yes.
Who was that? Was it he the same era as Leinart? It was USC quarterback when he came up and was pointing at him.
I think he was after Leinart. I believe. I think
He was
Burfict
Barkley.
Was it
Matt
Barkley?
Matt Barkley. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Who
like
else?
an Arizona State game did not officially start until Vontez had a personal foul. Like that's like, all right, game on. We're ready to go.
Let's go. All right. Who else?
Mikey came up with a really good one in the chat. The Pouncey brothers, when they were at Florida, they were kind of the guys up front that kind of had a little edge to them. See, in my mind, I went to an offensive player too. I don't think it has to be a defensive player, although I think it probably is the best. But William Floyd was our fullback, and he was the enforcer that you loved having behind you in the backfield at fullback because he'd protect you. He'd pick up a lot of the garbage. He also was that emotional leader, the guy who was, talking the most and was not afraid of anybody, would take anybody on any position. He always comes to mind.
I'm trying to think. What's his
I want
name?
to do this before the
Skowski
chat.
from Clemson.
I want to do this before the
He
chat.
was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sue's a great one. Reuben Foster.
Yeah.
Reuben Foster was violent. And for some reason, why are we going to end up with linebackers? Is it because you have to actually be crazy to play linebacker?
Yeah.
I mean, your job is to run around at full speed and hit things. Like although I honestly think that role for linebacker has become more safety these days in the modern version of the sport. But for a while it was, linebacker's job was just be big, fast, and hit hard.
And Ndamukong Suh is great.
Yeah. Troy Polamalu, he wasn't dirty, but Troy Polamalu would hit the hell out of you.
Yeah.
Receivers did not want to go over the middle against USC because again, it wouldn't be a dirty hit, but boy, would he hit you.
Is the best one ever though, Brian Bosworth?
Bosworth's more of
a character
to me. Yeah. Like I think Bo, I mean, it might have been different in college. I wasn't really old enough to watch Boz play at Oklahoma, but I do feel like Bo Jackson ended the Bosworth myth once they got to the NFL of him being a tough enforcer type. So I don't know if that just clouds my judgment on that one. But
Ray Lewis, he was pretty nasty.
I would go with the level behind him, Ed Reed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of Miami dudes would make this list. Like
Rolando McClain.
Yeah, I think recently a lot of people would tell you Dallas Turner. He'd like to lead with his head a little bit when going after the quarterback. Sean Taylor, there's somebody who mentioned that. Yeah, Andy Katzenmoyer in the chat. That's a really good one. Yeah.
If Christian Wilkins had tried to do that, his little stuff, I tell you what, somebody would be dropping the gloves with him.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, talking about the '80s and '90s, that stuff wouldn't have rolled. You
no,
would not have lasted very long.
You pull those little
golden era. That was not going by unnoticed.
No.
Major Wright at Florida was like kind of a headhunter. He was a safety. Let's see.
We've had a couple of Chris Zorich.
I don't remember Zorich playing in college. I remember him from the Bears.
You remember him from the Bears. I don't remember him playing in college. He was a All-American, but don't remember him there. Let's see. Cam Chancellor played at Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech, yep.
That was a good one right there.
Marcus Vick. The rare enforcer at QB. Bob Sanders from Nate in the chat. That's a great call. God,
Would you like to see enforcers?
No. I mean, well, yes, I would. I mean, let's be honest. Like, when it comes to hockey, there's always like some uproar about fighting, but man, I love the fights in hockey. I don't mind physical play. Like, I don't, as long as you're not trying to kill the guy. And even then, I kind of hope there's at least 25% of you trying to kill the guy.
Yeah.
I love big hits. And I'm of the school where, it used to be in college, protect them at all costs because they weren't getting paid. Now that they're getting paid, it's like, you know what you're signing up for. You might get the hell knocked out of you. And I don't know, I feel like if they're old enough to go to war, they're old enough to play football and accept the fact that they might get hit in the head. So yeah, I don't mind it.
I saw in the Canadian Hockey League on TSN.
You were watching Canadian hockey. You are just like
dark. Okay, it's been really hard since the Hurricanes got eliminated. No, we were talking earlier about your social media feed, and obviously since I was deep in hockey playoff stuff, I'm still getting fed a lot of hockey related content. And TSN has a new cameraman whose only job is to skate on the ice when a fight starts.
Yeah,
all the up close and personal and under the uppercut type shots. And so when someone's like that, they're not.
Did you see what he wears? They have him decked out like a stormtrooper in all white, so he blends in with the ice. He literally is wearing all white, head to toe. It's hilarious. That's the funniest part about is what he's wearing.
He's sitting there. He's like, are the gloves dropping? Okay, go. Skate out onto the ice. And you saw the cameras
circling
circling him. Yeah. I embrace.
He's like every kid in middle school that wanted to go watch the two dudes fight. Like that's who it is.
Oh, yeah.
We need to stop trying to deny those urges. They're natural. We like watching people hit each other.
Yeah. Come on. All right. Another question from the tailgate. Question: why does USC get so much unnecessary hate on the show? Yesterday, Lincoln was clowned for simming recruiting, even though he was the fourth ranked class on 24/7. So the classes from the last 3 years have all been top 20. He's had 2 classes in the last couple of years that have both been top 10, and he is currently 4th in the recruiting rankings right now. Criticism that I feel strongest about is that the talent did not match the win-loss record last season. And the idea that they were not, they didn't seem to have an edge in competition against teams that were physical and able to beat them up, probably included some of the changes that Lincoln Riley offered. Do we throw unnecessary hate on Lincoln Riley right now?
I mean, the one of us who has him ranked 30th isn't even here today.
Yeah.
That's well, I argued with him about it on the show. To me, that's insane. But I had him like, I don't hate USC. I'm just being honest about what that team was last year. They were soft. I mean,
I think has been atrocious.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
He's done fine. I mean, I in the portal, he's done really well. Being able to bring Caleb Williams, getting Jordan Addison, the best receiver in the country. He got Bear Alexander. Like, he did a pretty good job in the portal. He's done a pretty good job in recruiting. Now it's about developing a defense that matches what you've done on the offensive side of the ball. And the issue is it's followed him all the way from Oklahoma because that was always the knock against him for the Sooners. So I think they're fair criticisms and questions that even Lincoln Riley's trying to figure out and solve those issues.
Yeah, I mean, I just think we're also too close to Oklahoma. We're too close. we had Oklahoma coming at us so hard that we established these relationships. And we know how Oklahoma feels about Lincoln Riley, where Oklahoma not only felt burned by the way that he treated that situation, but they also looked around at what he left and were like, this was not somebody who had a plan for long-term sustainability. Like you had decent recruiting classes in terms of your 24/7 sports rank, but think about like player evaluation when a lot of the guys from the Lincoln era who transferred elsewhere were transferring down a step, maybe not all the way to a group of 5 conference, but certainly down a tier from where Oklahoma views itself. And I have sensed that there has been probably a little bit more leniency given to Brent Venables once everybody kind of looked under the hood and realized that the roster and the depth chart in place was, was getting masked by elite quarterback play an elite like game planning, play calling, and that those two things were enough to get you all the way to a Big 12 title into the college football playoff. But the full picture, which again, from what I'm sensing from Oklahoma fans, was really exposed as like, oh man, there's a lot of work that needs to be done for us to be able to maintain this. And that probably is baked into some of my analysis. That said, the guy who had him 30th is not on the show right now. His name is Bud Elliott. You can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. I believe all three of us had him in the top 10, right?
I think like 5.
I had him 6. I think
Yeah.
I didn't put him top 4, but with all the Big 12 titles and the college football playoff appearances, a hands down top 8 coach for me. So,
you know what? Our rankings came out before the reports that they have been trying to get out of the LSU week 1 matchup for 2 years, which is not helping anybody's reputation.
why are they doing that?
Also, it does help. Like Danny needs to be mean to Lincoln Riley because, as you mentioned, Chip, Danny's got a radio show with Dusty. And then he has to go into the studio every week, and Amanda's in there. And God knows you don't want to be saying anything bad about Oklahoma when Amanda's around. You might get shanked.
Exactly.
Especially with the Panthers and Rangers losing right now. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So whether it's Oklahoma talk and you know, like she's jumping on the Stars too.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got a lot of irons in the fire there, man. Come on. So let's take it easy. Okay. What about Riley keeping Grinch was his biggest coaching blunder? And also, is Wisconsin in trouble because I think Alex Grinch's birthday was recently. Wisconsin was like, "Happy birthday, Coach Grinch." And I was like, "Oh man, should I be changing my Wisconsin?" I think I'm at
just
Wisconsin.
like the safeties coach, right?
I think I'm at Wisconsin intrigue. I don't think I'm at Wisconsin hype right now.
Wisconsin will be interesting this year. I need to see what it looks like. I think they could be pretty dang good.
Really? They're on watch.
They're a variance team. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if it hits going year 2 into that offense and like Tyler Van Dyke kind of gets back to freshman year Miami form, they could be pretty good.
He's got to win the job first. You see Fickle will not commit to him as a starter. Still having an issue there. I don't know if that's, deception. Let's not let anybody know who the quarterback is or if it's real. I hope it's deception. Real. Yeah, I think it's real too.
All right. Next question. From the 5-star mailbag. Best CFB pod in all the land. Mailbag question: with conference expansion and the elimination of divisions, there is now potential for there to be 3 undefeated teams in the same conference heading into conference championship weekend. For example, with 16 teams in the SEC this year, Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss don't play each other in the regular season and could all go undefeated. Obviously, the potential goes up as you expand past 16 teams. In such a scenario, how does conference championship participation get decided or playoff seeding? Would we end up with another FSU-like outrage situation if an undefeated team doesn't get to play for a first-round bye? Would such an event be enough to slow or stop the hunger for future college expansion?
I think the undefeated team that didn't get into the conference title game wouldn't be that upset. Because they'd be like, sweet, we get a week off. Game. Like we don't, like that's your bye essentially. You don't get the first round bye, but you get a bye because you didn't have to go toe to toe with one of those other 2 teams. I think it's highly unlikely, especially from the SEC. I mean, we were talking about it for a minute in the ACC this past year. Was it 3? Was it North Carolina, Louisville, Florida State were coming down the stretch and they could have had a 3-way tie. And we were looking at tiebreakers like for fun. I don't think we thought it would happen then. It's still probably highly unlikely.
Yeah, it's very unlikely. But there is a non-zero chance.
Yeah, it is college football. I mean,
So, Tom, go ahead.
I mean, it'll just come down to the tiebreaker, which will likely be college football playoff ranking.
First is going to be any kind of head-to-head. First is your conference record. Second is any kind of head-to-head. Obviously, the situation we're talking about is none of them play each other. This is the big one. And in the scenario that was offered in the question, it said everyone's undefeated. But the common opponent's win-loss record is going to be a big one. So it's essentially a strength of schedule metric, or if there's a team that plays everybody, your win-loss record against the common opponents, out of conference win-loss record. And then you could get down all the way to college football playoff rankings in terms of the win-loss record of your conference schedule. Like,
but
I
if
remember,
they're all undefeated, they're all going to have the same record.
No. The last year with Louisville, the issue was because they had played a soft ACC schedule, they would have lost a tiebreaker.
Oh, okay. I get
the
you.
fact that
The record of the opponents, not your record against the
combined
opponent.
win-loss record of your conference opponents end up coming into play. It could end up being the college football playoff ranking, like you mentioned, or it could be like the Mountain West, like a computer ranking that is proprietary information where we had a 3-way tie and they just went beep, boop, boop, pop, pop, beep, beep, pop, pop. Okay, UNLV and Boise State. There you go. And they just, go out there and kick it up. But the SEC in this question has not released its official tiebreak policy for the 2024 season, to my knowledge. Looked it up before we got going. So, actually, I looked it up during the show. But I'm just being honest with you here. The ACC using the record of your conference schedule is going to create some fascinating. If the SEC chooses to use it too, it's going to create some fascinating rooting interests when you want the teams that you've already beat to continue winning to be able to give you the best chance all the way down the stretch. Hope that was informative for those.
Bud's not here today, but I'll take Bud's place and say that the tiebreaker should be the amount of money you spent on football.
Oh, yeah. The tiebreaker is, are you one of the 18 schools that are allowed to compete for a national championship? Mm-hmm. Are you not? Anthony, we have a tiebreak policy that says whoever can hit Kiffin with a mustard bottle from 50 yards.
Now, is Lane allowed to move? Because that could take a while, because Lane will just dodge it.
I don't know.
I do think this is a very unlikely scenario, but I kind of want it to happen simply so the people who made all of this happen can just sit there and sit in it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, oops.
I think we made a whole thing out of ACC Coastal Chaos for years.
But it didn't matter because they were going to lose to the team from the Atlantic.
But the fact that it was a thing and the fact that people caught on to it suggests that I don't know if they would hate it to have something so crazy and convoluted, We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the people in charge now might, because it's, they're trying to make it the NFL. They don't want anything crazy and convoluted.
Okay. And want it all straightforward. Is that why we're going to expand to 14? Because the NFL is at 14?
Mm-hmm. And then we're going to have whatever.
Oh, and then we're going to go to 16?
Probably. Oh, for sure they're going to 16 at some point. They'll end up at 24.
No.
Yeah. Chip, they're trying to make the NCAA tournament 96 teams. Because, damn it, we can't risk letting that 17 and 15 ACC team not get to play in the tournament. Like, yes, of course they will. Once the money starts coming in and everybody's getting kind of jealous of not getting the same money, they're like, we're going to have to expand this. And then the TV networks are going to be like, sure, we'll take 8 more games.
Yeah. Hey, were you happy to see that the SEC might be picking up the 9th game?
I'll believe it when I see it.
I know I didn't tee you up yesterday. We were talking about it at the beginning of the show, not the end of the show, and everybody was yelling at us about not talking about EA Sports because the embargo hadn't been lifted. And
where you at, KCFL?
Yeah,
nerd.
I was like, hey, Tom, you ready to call SEC cowards again? Here we go. Go. The annual point that Tom Fernelli has made about the SEC's cowardice of playing each other. I was like, wow, they might start listening to Tom.
The subhead is that anybody playing 9 games is logically stupid. You should go to 10 because you're creating unbalanced schedules. And in an era now where we have an expanded playoff and you're going to have at-large berths, to have unbalanced conference schedules and that some of your teams will play 5 home games, while others will only be playing 4, will determine a playoff spot because one team got an extra home game. So if you're going to, like the Big Ten plays 9, the Pac-12 played 9, that was great that they were doing it, but they should have been at 10 from the start. And now that the conferences are just kind of, getting into 4 and 2 and 3 soon, you should only be playing 10 because non-conference games are going to be fewer and far between anyway.
Let's get one more here. Jay Harden says, thanks for being a daily source of entertainment and information. You've made me into a much bigger college football fan by listening to you. Love to hear it. My question, in the coach rankings, you all kind of lumped the first timers into a wait and see tier at or near the bottom. I want to know which first time FBS coach you think will make the biggest jump in next year's rankings.
I mean, let's go over the list here. There's Fran Brown at Syracuse. Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. Deshaun Foster. Are we counting Sharon Moore?
Yeah. All right. Well, but let's then say another category that says not Sharon Moore. Because Sharon, we had a mailbag question last week. Like, did Sharon Moore get a boost because of his interim coach wins? Yes. Of course he got a boost.
Okay, so are we counting new P5 or P4 coaches who have G5 experience, or just plain new head coaches? Because are we including Signetti? Are we including, Brennan?
Yes.
Okay.
Because both of them are in. Brennan would be in the best situation to make a jump.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Fran Brown.
Syracuse.
Yeah, I just think Syracuse has a decent shot to get to a bowl game this year. And I think if that happens, he's not going to be he was 66th on my ballot, but I think he'll climb up in it. Like, if you get Syracuse to a bowl game, look what happened with Dino. You'll climb up into the 40s, maybe the low 30s in these rankings. Whereas I just look at Deshaun Foster and the situation he's inheriting at UCLA and also moving to a new conference. I have a real tough time seeing UCLA having a great season that's going to cause him to jump. Jeff Lebby at State, bro, you're in the SEC. And Mississippi State has shown it can win games in the SEC with Mike Leach and Dan Mullen. So it's not impossible. It's just your first year as a head coach. Like, Mike Leach had plenty of experience coming in and doing what he was doing. I just think that's a difficult situation. Signetti, I think, is a great hire at Indiana, but just, I don't know. It's possible because I do feel like the bottom of the Big Ten is very malleable. Like, there's plenty of room to maneuver. Like, the difference in those teams is minimal for the most part. So
also the loss of divisions helps Indiana.
Mm-hmm. So there's that chance for Indiana to surprise people. What about Bill O'Brien at BC? Does he count?
I don't think Bill O'Brien's what if Bill O'Brien as Thomas Castellanos lighten the world on fire?
He might. And then again, like we mentioned, Brent Brennan, Arizona's got a legit shot of winning the Big 12.
Right. Brent Brennan feels
he might be a top 20 coach next year if things go right.
Because then you go back and you review San Jose State and you're like, wow, that was awesome. All along the way.
So I'll go with Brown, but I think Brent Brennan's probably the best answer.
Fran Brown, Syracuse. Yeah, give me Brent Brennan. Are we counting the Northwestern coach? Even if you count the Northwestern coach, I think last year was exceeding expectations, and we should not expect that 2024 will match last year's results.
You ever broken a leg?
I have not.
All right. Well, if you ever break your leg, there's an adrenaline rush at first. So it hurts like hell, but then the pain kind of goes away because your body just responds to it. I think last year for Northwestern was the adrenaline rush after the broken leg. I wouldn't be surprised if they wake up tomorrow in 2024 and that thing hurts like a bitch. Because again, they're overhauling the coaching staff for the most part. Brendan Sullivan is transferred to Iowa. They have no stadium. They're going to be playing on a practice field. It's like I feel like there are so many factors in play for Northwestern that we're not really considering that are hard to just kind of quantify that could lead to a pretty tough season for the Wildcats. Because I still think talent-wise, they're closer to the bottom than they are to the middle of the league.
Good points. All right. So I hope that everybody has gone and they bought their binders, their spiral notebooks. They've got their syllabus printed out, syllabi for all the different educating that we got coming your way. A lot of summer school coming up in the next 2 weeks. We will be jumping in as well with more mailbag and news analysis. But this is the time of year where you get the head start on all your friends and on everybody else in terms of what the college football season is going to look like, not just for your favorite team, but for some of the most notable teams in the country. I mean, we've got I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of summer school episodes that are being knocked out, recorded, and loaded up for you right now. Make sure that you are subscribed and enjoy those. Also have a conversation coming your way soon with Aaron Taylor, the CBS Sports longtime college football analyst who's been with the company forever. Tom, I actually got to tell him and express on air that, his voice, whether he was with, Jenny and then Amanda, I was like, but that 10:30 Mountain West spot, that's a romantic college football place for me. I was like, we're done with the instant reaction show. I'm just like finally soaking in, and like good games, like good Mountain West football games. You get a Fresno State, a San Jose State, like you get good programs in that spot. And so, Aaron Taylor, great conversation with him on all things Big Ten, all things college football. He will be joining the College Football Today desk with Adam Zucker, Brian Jones, and Rick Neuheisel. So we talked a little bit about that as well. Be on the lookout for that episode wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him somewhere at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
What's the bathroom situation going to be like at Northwestern home games?